Nancy is on. Jeff Marcotte is here.
Yes, he is.
Is David Morse on or not on? David Morse is on. I know Joe Lucas
just shows everybody.
So Doug is not here. Dwight, I know, isn't going to be here. So we don't have Mark and Sid. All right, that's fine. So actually, we can only seat one alternate.
Mark's here. Did you say Mark? Did you see him? Mark.
Oh,
I'm here.
he is. So these people want to be soon. Pretty soon it's just going to be actually you and I sitting.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to spread out the entire table.
We can be like Sherlock's. They won't know. Put the fuzzy blurred background. All right. Oh, maybe he's not. So she's recording. So she's going to go off of this then, right?
I think so. And she has a recording over there. Like
Okay.
normal.
Is it running? Are we recording?
Yeah, we already did that.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see folks here. Many times we have nobody in the audience for our meetings, but all of our meetings are exciting and wonderful. So feel free to come anytime you'd like. I'm going to call the meeting to order, which is Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for June 16th, 2022. I have 7:35 that will call to order. We're going to do a roll call of commissioners here first, and then the commissioners who are by Zoom. But before we do that, I just want to make certain, Ken, I know Mark, David, Nancy, Tim, you're on by Zoom. Are you able to hear us? Okay, I don't have the laptop with me tonight, so you're not going to be able to see the view of us. So, yeah, if whatever we need to do. So, okay. Well, we're working on that. So to see what we can do. So I'm going to do a roll call. I will start with Mr. Adaletta, Commissioner Adaletta. Jeff Gordon. And we have Nancy Frazier.
Present.
And Tim Young.
Present.
David Morse.
Here.
And Mark Blackmer.
Present.
Are we able to hear them? Let me see. Okay. So we'll note for the record, we have a quorum. I've been notified that Doug Porter is not able to attend tonight and that Dwight Reinowitz is not able to attend tonight. So they have RSVP'd. Designation of alternates. We are in need of an alternate. We have one alternate. Dean Gould, we get to seat you. Congratulations. Big party tonight. Yes, that's right. And we actually have cannabis on as a new business, so maybe it'll be a fun party. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Pledge of Allegiance. Jeff, do you mind starting us off? Otherwise, we're lost without you. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. My chair's report will be pretty quick. My usual thank yous to commissioners for doing the work that needs to be done at our meetings. I know we do meet twice a month, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you as well, my usual, to staff for the work that gets done during meetings and all the work that gets done in between meetings and heading up to meetings, including minute taking and getting the minutes together. So the usual thank yous for that. Our next meeting is, if I'm correct, July 7th. Is that the first Thursday? I think so. That's a planning meeting, just so you know. So if for some reason people aren't able to attend, just let us know. We will get information out relative to that planning meeting. The other is that If you don't have your copy of the document that I think we've sent out a couple of times, but I know we sent it out a bit ago, which is PA 2129. That's the big document of the state law from last year that made a whole host of changes about planning and zoning commissioners. There's a number of items in here that we are going to have to attend to. If you didn't get a copy, I think it might have gone out again recently. But if for some reason you didn't, we can get it out to you. So this went out some long time ago, but I thought it might have gone out again after our annual legal training session. I don't remember. I might have, but I don't remember. But we can get copies to you, out to everybody. I'll send you the copy I have, Ashley. It's just a PDF. So that way you guys can take a look at it again. Some of the things we've already taken care of, some we need to take care of. Some of them we have to take care of by January 1st, which also includes, I know for those who are at the annual legal training session, part of the wonders of PA 2129 are provisions that start kicking in as of January 1st, meaning that we have to then start attesting to 4 hours a year for training. I know we do training. But now it all has to be tracked and accounted for and reported. There has some guidelines that have come out from Office of Policy and Management that Rich Roberts shared with us. I don't know if this went out or not after our annual legal training session. If not, we'll send it out to everybody. But just keep in mind, we're going to start to get a process in place and learn more about what actually will count for certified training and what doesn't count for certified training. So I just wanted to mention that so that way we're aware that that's some stuff we're going to have to bring up from time to time to get some of that squared away for that. I don't have anything else outside of some of the agenda items. We have citizens' comments. Are there any comments from citizens not pertaining to any agenda item? Just something that has nothing to do. Okay. We have meeting minutes. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes. We have May 5th, special meeting. We have May 19th, monthly business meeting, June 2nd, special meeting. What is the wish of the commission? Or no wish? Or I'll make a motion. Sure. Yep. Just to start out, your motion would be for all 3. Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Nancy did. Thank you. I'm trying to keep track also of online. So thank you. So we have a motion on the table, which is to accept as presented the 3 meeting minutes. Joe, did you have anything? Mm-hmm.
One last line. I think it's supposed to be quantitative instead of qualitative as the second qualitative. So I chart 22 number of given total and use qualitative data instead of quantitative data. I think it should be quantitative.
So the second qualitative should be quantitative. That would make sense to me based upon what we discussed and decided. So you're talking then, that goes on to the second page, number 4.
Number 4 is
yes. Okay. Okay.
So that was one comment. Just a minor one on the May 19th minutes.
Mm-hmm.
On the last page, 8, under preliminary discussion, number 1. I think that should be West Road.
Where are you here? Oh, I see. You're on the last page. B1 West Road and uses for it.
ROD right now.
Oh.
Other than that, see where I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it technically listed as West Road or is it actually Route 171? What's the actual property listing? I know we know what that property is, but I don't remember. Right. I mean, it's clear to us which little property we were dealing with anyway. So yes, thank you. Does anyone have anything else relative to any of the meeting minutes? Yep. So you're saying here that line is parking would be the only challenge under this permit as farms have no parking regulations instead of have not parking regulation. Okay.
Where did that one, Joe?
So you're talking page 4, May 19th. It's the sentence that begins, parking would be the only challenge. So instead of the word not, you're saying no.
Not yet. It is still a preliminary discussion, item 8.
No, go to page 4 of that meeting minutes, the last page, and then look at the top. It starts with little Roman numeral 4, 5, 6, and then it goes down to B, and then Roman. So right before that, there's a sentence that says parking would be the only challenge.
Okay,
right above it.
Roman.
Yeah, Roman numeral 6-1. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be, instead of the word not, it would be the word no. Does anyone have anything else relative to any of the meeting minutes? Anybody, any commissioners online? Okay. So hearing no further discussion, we'll go through a vote. Because we have some commissioners by Zoom, we actually have to, all of our votes have to be by roll call instead of a show of hands. So I'll go through each name. And actually, let me just mark down who I seated under the voting log. So this is seated. Joe Adaletta? We don't have, yeah, Mark's on. Mark Blackmer?
Abstain.
Abstain. Nancy Frazier?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I'll vote aye. Dean Gould? Jeff Marcotte? David Morse?
Abstain.
Joe Plulik? And Timothy Young?
I'm going to abstain.
Well, we still have enough yes votes that it passes. So, Amy, I think you can hear us, even though you're not here in person. Your record of commission approving your minutes that you take has continued unbroken. Congratulations. We'll include that in your party, Dean. Ooh, does that come out of our budget, though? Actually, we get a new budget as of July 1st, so we're fine. I would assume, yes. You'll check on that, right? All right. So this then takes us to Roman numeral 5, non-residential zoning permits. We have a couple to deal with right now. One is 5A 543 Route 169 Tiny Forest Child Care. I like that name. And this is a non-residential zoning permit. I'm going to state a few things for the record so that way we have it, even though I know the answers to these questions, but we'll state it anyway. Ashley, you had reviewed this, and it's a complete application, and the fees are paid. Okay. Anything from your staff perspective that you would like to start us out with? Can I ask a couple of questions just for formality? Just because we want to make certain that we do have some things listed. The map, the block, the lot number on this application, we do have somewhere on file, correct? Okay, so I just want to make certain so that way we have it. And then I'll get to that afterwards. And There is a question on the application, question 1, that asks what land use is your proposed business replacing? Is there any existing business there right now? I know what's there, but is there? Okay. Okay. Just because that, just wanted to make certain, even though yes, it did, but that's, but it's not there now. So, but it used to be. And then there's a question left blank on number 6A. How many parking spaces are provided for employees and customers, and where are they located? B says relative to enough parking on site, that there is enough parking, but I just wanted to have that question answered because technically it's a question we ask on the application. So I just wanted to make certain that that this answer that there's enough parking also applies to parking spaces for employees and customers. I'm assuming that's all lumped in, is your understanding? Okay. I got the sense of that from that answer. And then one question I do have for you, Ashley, is a sign being proposed with this or not? I didn't see anything because technically if it's not being proposed, it doesn't get bundled in, and a sign then has to be a separate permit later. And then is there anything that you're aware of that we had to get from NDDH, Public Health? Okay. All right. I know the state does its own certification. So, and then I know the answer to this, but I want to make certain it's clear on the record on the property owner's written consent form. There's a signature, one of the trustees as the authorized agent. I'm assuming that's covering as far as legal property owner, you know, as far as.
Could we at least put in the name? I'm assuming it's as represented on the page.
I think it would be helpful because it says here, please be advised, comma, and then there's a blank legal property owner of the property, which should be actually listed on this form: location of property, the street, the map, the block number, the lot number. And then it says here, dear, who hereby authorized, then there's a blank to ask as my authorized agent. Then there's a signature for a legal property owner. Then there's authorized agent. I'm not questioning that this isn't legal. I just want to make certain that if we have owner's written consent form here, that indeed things are okay. Well, this is what it says on the form. So that's why I'm asking. Because technically we have it on the form that says written consent form as opposed to a different part of the form. So I'm not questioning it. I just want to make certain that in the files, it's clear and things are correct, because say 10 years from now, someone pulls the file and none of us are on the commission, and we have blanks on a consent form. I don't want any unnecessarily avoidable issue, which sometimes happens when things in the past have, not blaming you, but, or Delia, but you go back 20 years and things weren't always documented. So it's not something that I feel holds up the application. We just want to make certain the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted on a file. Yep. Yeah. Delia?
Yes.
Correct.
Necessary to complete staff. Yep.
Well, technically it is here, property owner's written consent form, and we just need to also check the type of application on it. I think it's important just to be thorough, because again, we may remember this if it comes back in a year, but 10, 15 years, I mean, we've at times looked at files. I know you've noted this, Delia, times you go back like 20 years and you look at files and you're like, we have no idea what the heck was documented or done, and then it poses issues. So we just want to make certain it's all clear in the file. So it doesn't have anything to do with the merit of the application, but it's just more the process we have to follow. So nothing else from your viewpoint then, Ashley? So, okay, well, I'm happy to open up to the business owners. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. We appreciate your being here and wanting to open up childcare, of which I know, you know, there's always a need for childcare places. But you're welcome. If there's anything you wish to say to, you're not required to. We may have questions that we can ask you, but you're not So if you wish, you're more than happy to. If you do say anything, just, well, Amy's on Zoom, just state your name because this gets recorded for the legal recording of our meeting. But you don't have to say anything. Okay. Anything from commissioners?
I think
David.
that, yes, I think that if when we approve this, which I think we should, we just need to make sure that that property owner's form is filled out. It's just a blank form with a signature on the bottom that needs to be filled out.
I think what we can do with the motion would be that anything on this application that needs to be finished just needs to be done, including the consent form, that's all. Then where we're just covered for anything that needs to be put in. We can make that as a part of the motion if we wish. Anything from anybody else from commissioners? Joe?
As presented. Property owners.
Okay, so Joe, you made that motion. Is there a second? So motion by Joe Adaletta, second by Dean Gould to approve the non-residential zoning permit application as presented with the condition that the consent form be completed in full as possible. So anything else on this motion? Okay, anything else from any of you on? Okay, we'll go through the roll, hearing nothing further on this. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
President. Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I'll say aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. And last but not least, Timothy Young.
Aye.
That so passes. Congratulations. We wish you the best. Ashley will do her magic for post-approval stuff that needs to be done. So certainly you'll work with her in that regard. Congratulations. You're welcome to stay if you want. You don't have to. The next is agenda item 5B. This is 290 Route 169 Supreme Sheds and Barns. This is a continuation of what we've done before we technically table this. So to be thorough, can I get a motion to untable this item? So then that way we can bring it back up, and then I have to mention something about one of the documents we received and how we want to handle it.
I'll make that motion.
And you seconded it? Motion by Timothy Young, seconded by Jeff Marcotte to untable this item that had been tabled last month. Any discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing none, I'll go through the row. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. And Timothy Young.
Aye.
That so passes, it's untabled. We had asked to get input from town attorney because we needed to figure out what type of permit are we asking. The communication that's come in from town attorney, of course, staff has it. We as commissioners have it. It is technically right now listed as a privileged information meeting. Right now, we're not discussing it unless we want to make it public. My understanding is from Rich, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, that he didn't have a problem if we decided to make this public. He doesn't feel it's privileged to a degree that we have to at some point go into executive session. He was okay with this being made public, which means we as a commission have to vote to say it's okay. And once we make it public, it's no longer under that privilege per se. That way it can be openly discussed in whatever cited, from it. That's a decision the commission will need to make, which would be a motion either to keep it privileged, which we then have to be very careful discussing what he told us, or my recommendation is to make it public, and that way we can discuss it. Is there a second? So that's a Joe and Joe motion. Any discussion on this motion? Is there any commissioners who would want to object to making this public? Otherwise, I'll go through the roll. Making public. This is which agenda item? It's 5B. Attorney document. Okay. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula. And Timothy Young.
Aye.
That so passes. This document will now be public for that. The issue for us that we're going to have to make a decision on is what type of permit does the commission feel to go with? In April, that we had discussion about this, and there was some discussion about making it a modification of a non-residential zoning permit. Last month in May, there was further discussion about it as far as do the regulations say, and do we need to have it listed as this has to go for a special permit? And just to cite that part of the regulation, get the right book here. That's the part of the regulation that deals with commercial district, about what is permitted by non-residential zoning permit and what requires special permit. And that, I believe, is page 39. It's under Article 3B 3K, light industrial / manufacturing uses get listed as allowed by special permit. And that was what was part of what was discussed. The question was asked of Rich, and Rich is advice to us is it's an interpretation that should be made by the commissioner, by you, referring to you, Ashley, but this really would come to a decision we would need to make. He cites that there's no definition of manufacturing in the zoning regulations. So we'd have to come to a commonly understood meaning of what that word is, unless the zoning regulations otherwise give us context or something otherwise says it in there. So, really at this point, he can't say it's definitely one way or the other. So it really is going to come down to us and whether this fits the definition we have for, I think we have a definition for commercial, which also got cited. The commercial in here says commercial use and occupation, employment, or enterprise that is carried on for profit. So it really comes down to interpretation, which technically for interpretation we would need to do, and that's on page 8, which tells us certain things about interpreting our regulations. That's in Article 1H under interpretation, as far as how we sometimes handle these dilemmas when they come up and what we think and what we don't think. So at this point, that's the input we have received from town attorney. And it's really at this point, the ball's in our court. So I'll open it up for discussion, questions, comments. This is commission and staff only at this point. Joe Adaletta?
Yeah.
Sure, please.
Anticipating building a few model beds on the property, acting as a retail operation to put some demo units essentially on the property, and actual construction of purchased units would be done at a customer site. And the initial construction of either 6 building or 1,200 square feet, depending upon how the applicant wanted to divide up the size of the buildings. I was given that latitude to do that initial construction of those limited number of units. And that was considered acceptable. That's how the permit was issued, to allow that initial construction of that model sheds. Since that really hasn't been followed, since many of those sheds have been moved off site and replacement models have been constructed on site, and the applicant is coming forth with the request to continue that type of building sheds on the property. To me, that sounded more like a manufacturing operation. And following our attorney's description of how you would have to go to a commonly understood meaning of manufacturing, having been in manufacturing for about 35 years, typically you would have a raw material. The sheds have raw materials of lumber, windows, hardware, roofing materials, paint, all kinds of materials that are fabricated into a finished product. So he has a finished good inventory, and he has customers who would buy finished good products. And that stream of raw materials, fabrication, finished good sales, done over and over again, is certainly a manufacturing type of operation. And I would certainly wish this applicant good luck in doing it. And the only thing I think the commission needs to do is see that instead of a non-residential permit, this really falls under the description in our regulations under the community district, light industrial / manufacturing, and requires a special permit. And as we discussed at our attorney training session, we have modified our special permit requirements to make them less onerous if the conditions warrant. And I think the conditions of this applicant warrant the lesser requirements of the special permit, but still require a special permit, as opposed to a non-residential. So that's why I raised the question last month, and why I still feel that in trying to follow our regulations, the applicant is describing a manufacturing operation, and it falls within our definitions of the special permit.
Thank you, Joe. I know we don't have a definition of manufacturing. We sometimes then hunt to the latest illustrated book of development definitions. And all that says is establishments engaged in the mechanical or chemical transformation of materials or substances into new products, including the assembling of component parts, the creation of products, and the blending of materials such as oils, plastics, resins, or liquors, but processing on farms if the materials grown on the farm is not considered manufacturing. But we otherwise don't have a definition ourselves, but we'd have to default to whatever we feel is the proper usage of manufacturing for our purposes. Is there anything from any other commissioners relative to this issue as far as what permit the commission feels we need to go with? As far as a special permit.
This is Dave Morse. It certainly seems that, it is, he's bringing raw materials in and building something there. It's light manufacturing. Certainly can do the easier of the, as far as the special permit goes, we can make it, we don't have to be, it doesn't have to be as onerous as the full one, but it's kind of falls in between that, he's building things there.
And that's the point about our special permits is we did take care previously to streamline it in a sense, not weaken our responsibilities, but streamline it where a lot of things we used to require automatically people would have to come in with waivers. We've said we don't need those things if it's not applicable, but there's certain core things we need. So we have made it, in a sense, a bit easier, but not at all gotten away from if we have to really get involved with a big special permit. So it does give us more flexibility. I understand your point, Joe, about that. And one of the things as well that had been brought up, and that's why I mentioned that, that item about interpretation, that if there's, I wouldn't say disagreement, but trying to clarify between, well, can this fall under definition of commerce or commercial versus what that regulation says on the special permit, even though it does say manufacturing. Our regulations also say that if one section of the regulations imposes standards greater than those of another, which basically means if there's anything that's in conflict, the more restrictive section applies. And so to me, I would have to say, looking at this, I would agree this is manufacturing, and the regulation does say under special permit, like industrial / manufacturing. It would seem to me that we would have to go that route in that regard. So did you have something, Joe?
Yeah, just the definition we have for use.
Correct.
It's not listed as a permitted use. It's saying permitted uses.
Correct.
So if there are, under the special permit, uses, applications using the word commercial, it doesn't just list specifically commercial uses, but it says commercial kennels, commercial composting facilities, commercial recreation facilities. But I didn't see any place else where it said, in general, commercial use would be a zoning, non-residential zoning.
Unless it falls under anything that says it can be done by non-residential. So I'll open up to others what others think about what type of permit to go with. Anybody else of commissioners on Zoom or here? If not, I think what we should do to make it clear, because this is going to be important, just not now, but moving forward, how we're interpreting this. So if it comes up again, unless we change the regulations for some reason, we need to be mindful of what we're doing and certainly strive to be consistent as best as possible, given whatever, if we were faced with similar circumstances. Delia?
She's not coming through.
Are you guys not able to hear that?
No.
The zoning regulations under special permitted uses includes retail commercial uses, and the definition says activity involving the sale or rental of goods, merchandise, or related services to the direct consumer, including buying and selling in person and online, and may include the assembly of such goods, which is incidental or subordinate to the selling activities. So it's not really clear where the regulations divide assembly of the goods from the manufacturing. So I just wanted to.
That is true. And I think this raises the point, whenever we find things that we need to clarify in the regulations, we make notes of it. So this is something we're going to need to be making a note of. There's a list of various things we're going to need to kind of attend to, with regards to that. But it is something that's important. But again, if we decide that this is going to be special permit, if we're faced with a similar situation, say in 6 months, we just have to be mindful of what we've decided to try to be consistent. Not all applications are the same, but still we just have to be what we're doing. So this is a good notation to make relative to what we're doing. Unless there's anything further from commissioners, what we really would need is, I think, to make it clear on the record, would be a vote if what type of permit we're requiring. So that way it's clear on the record we've taken the vote. Also, if we have to look back at this for some reason, it's clear on the record what the decision was. But unless anybody has anything further, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to building.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Joe Frulick.
I'm sorry.
let me just-
Excuse me. Could you just
let me
repeat?
just-
Could you repeat what the motion was? Because I don't think everybody on Zoom could hear what the actual motion, the wording was.
Yeah, that's what I'm going through right now. So that
Thank
way,
you.
let us know if you can't hear. So then why don't we do, so that this is a motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Joe Pulak. Joe, do you mind reading your motion again and adding whatever you needed to add in? And then Joe Pulak, if you're okay with whatever.
Would move to require that the building and manufacturing of the operation of Supreme Barns and Sheds at their current site require a special permit for the ongoing or continued use of that land to build additional barns or sheds as required by our regulations.
So that was, I was just trying to get a partial requires. I just want to make certain we've gotten it clear because we have to write this down. So I got that you're saying I wouldn't be that we're requiring that the building and manufacturing of Supreme Sheds, what I think Supreme Barn and Sheds, whatever their name is, at the current site requires a special permit. So the continuing manufacturer of barns and sheds. You said as per our regulations? Okay. That's okay with you, Joe? Were you guys able to hear that online? Okay.
Yes.
That's the motion that we have before us. Any discussion on the motion? Did you have something?
It's Mark. Do
Just
we
one,
have,
wait, Mark, just 1 second. Wait, Joe,
They've got a permit to now. So I think we need to modify the motion. You say that if they continue to operate outside of what they're permitted for, then we'll require a special permit. Does that make sense? Am I off base in saying that?
is that what you were saying when you said for the continuing manufacturing of barns and sheds? So you saying they're doing it now?
They've been doing it.
Right. If they want to then continue doing it, they have to seek a special permit.
Right.
What you're thinking?
I just, you know, if they go back to doing what they're supposed to do, then do we still need to require it for a special permit?
Well, that was the direction meeting to the original permit. And as far as I can tell, that was not being adhered to either.
So if they were to say, we want to go back to the provisions of the original permit, not do the manufacturing, then they already have a permit to cover that. Because things are going beyond what they were to do. If they want to continue to do it, provided this commission approves a permit that's provided to us, this would have to be a special.
Agreement that they continue to operate the way they are. I just that they need a special permit. I just want to be sure that we're not taking away the right we've already given them, except for our working outside the parameters of what we told them they can do or permitted them to do. So,
and that wasn't the intent of your motion. It was more They're allowed to do what they're supposed to do. But if they want to do more than that, which is what they're doing now, they have to come in for a special permit.
Exactly.
Wording.
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to just say, for the record, I don't know if you have to deny the non-residential.
Well, that's an additional item once we vote on this.
Yeah.
Yes, that has to be raised. There's two ways of tackling that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will follow all this. Yes, all right. Do we have anything further on the motion? Anything with any of you online? You're all discussion on this? So this, we'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Mark Wagner.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, did I miss you saying something you wanted to speak to before? I'm sorry if I did. Nancy Fraser? Are you able to hear us?
No.
No. We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
It might have been the way that things were turned. Okay. Nancy Fraser?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould? Jeff Marcotte? He said yes to the motion. So, but I didn't hear. Was there something that we missed that you wanted to say, Mark, before we finish this vote?
Just, I was going to ask for the discussion if we're putting in what type of special permit this is. If we've decided there can be more or less restrictive ones, does that need to be worded?
No, that happens during the process. We decide how much we need. We have a lot of flexibility during the special permit process to determine beyond core things what we might need. So that gets determined during that process. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. And Timothy Young.
Aye.
That so passes. You'll let them know, Ashley. Okay. I might run out of pieces of paper here. So that then takes us to the next item, which you mentioned, Ashley. Technically, we have a non-residential zoning application, and we've untabled it. So there's two ways of dealing with this. One is we can deny it. The other is we can ask for it to be withdrawn. Doesn't mean they withdraw it. But technically, if we've determined that it needs a special permit, then in a sense, we've determined this application is not the right application. We can just deny I don't think we're allowed to void. It's denial. We can deny, we can approve, or we can approve with conditions. Those are the three things that we can do in general. So I'm not certain if we can void it. Wouldn't that just be the same as denying it? Well, we can state our reasoning in the motion to make it clear why we're denying it. I mean, it's on the record. If we deny it, it's because we've already determined that it needs a different application and this is not the right application for it. So however the commission wishes to do it, but that's the only two ways I think legally we can handle is we deny it or we ask them to withdraw, but it's not a guarantee they withdraw this. But I would think they would if given our decision, but.
We can't hear, Jeff.
Wait just 1 second, Joe. Are you able to hear Joe?
No, we can't. We can only hear who the computer is facing.
All right. Yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have a full audio visual capability in this room.
I was commenting that the application that we tabled, the one before us, is noted as an expansion of existing use. So denying this application before us doesn't void their original application, which was the permit to build demo models on site and leave those demo models and build future structures at a customer site. That permit would still, in my mind, still exist. This one before us tonight, the expansion of that permit could be denied and they'd still be covered by the existing permit.
Correct, because what they say they want to do is build and deliver sheds, which is also what the property owners for them to be able to do. So if we deny this application, it gets back to the fact that it doesn't void the existing approved permit. They can continue to do that within the provisions of that permit. If they want to then start to do more in their scope, then they would have to come in for the special permit that we've just decided they would need. So it would seem the cleanest way to do it would be to deny it. And I wouldn't say be done with it, but you deny it. It's on the record our reason why, that it's not because of the merits of the application or we disagree outright with the ability to build sheds. It's more we're denying it because it's not the right application that we've already determined it should be. And then if they want to submit a special permit, they talk with staff and go through that process and bring it to us. And then we go accordingly. But we do have to do something with this permit before us. So I'm open to what we wish to do.
Well, it seems like we should deny it if it's in a motion for expanded the permit. It won't do anything to the original permit, but we need to deny this one with reasons as to why we're doing it.
So Joe, your motion was to deny this permit dated 5/4/22, and do you want us to have in that motion the reason why?
This commissioner's opinion requires this thing.
And well, we've already voted. So the commission itself has voted to say we need this. So it will be based upon, if you're okay with it, the commission's decision about the type of permit. That way it shows the commission has already voted on it. And okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So that was a motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Jeff Marcotte. Is there any discussion further on this motion? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I'll vote aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula. And Timothy Young.
Yeah, aye.
That so passes. You'll let them know? Thank you. Today's what, the 16th. So I'll mark down the date of denial. So that way it's noted. The next one is agenda item. Where are we now? Well, agenda item 6 is old business. We have no old business. Agenda item 7, new business. This is number SP 6410625M for modification. Jason and Jamie Bosley, 290 Route 169 Rusty Relic. Add retail space to barn. Just a few things that I just need to ask and note for the record. I know the answers to these anyway. Ashley Delia, this is a complete application as best as can be done. We don't have to go into all the details of it because I know you have a memo, but there are some things that we would be needing and waiting for, correct? We don't have to go through the whole list because that we should bring up at public hearing. But... Okay, so we'll just note that when this is getting ready, whatever items you flagged, you can communicate to the applicant's representative, and let them know what things you feel are needed. And then the fees have been paid. Okay. Because this is a modification of a special permit, we have to follow the special permit process, which means it has to go to a public hearing. We can't discuss this otherwise tonight because that's outside of a public hearing. So our job tonight, if we so choose to do it, is to schedule a public hearing. And our next date for a public hearing, if I have my dates correct, is July 21st. I think that's the third Thursday. So our decision-making tonight is solely to schedule a public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Were you guys able to hear that? All right, I'll just read it then. This is a motion by Jeff Marcotte to schedule a public hearing for July 21st, 2022 at 7:45 p.m. for the purposes of dealing with the special permit modification application for Rusty Relic. Is there a second?
All right.
Okay. So let me just write this down. Special public hearing. That's the 21st at 7:45 p.m. Okay. Any discussion on the motion on the table? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I'll vote aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. And last but not least, Timothy Young.
Aye.
That so passes. And maybe one of these days, Tim, I'll start at the end of the alphabet so you can be the first in the roll call.
Oh, please don't. I'm used to this. You know, you'll mess me up if you put me at the beginning. I just don't belong there. I'm an ender.
So that so passes. So thank you for coming tonight. There isn't anything further we can discuss on this matter because it all has to be done through public hearing. Can you just state your name for the record? Because we just have to. So which address do we have on the, yeah, okay, yep. So we need to correct the, so let's just note that for the record. And then when we post this for the next one, we'll just write whatever the address is on it. So thank you. So you'll work with Ashley Delia as far as getting ready for the public hearing. Yeah, thank you. Okay, this next one, I believe, Mr. Udis, you're here for this, but you're not here in person. You're on Zoom. So you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, so I'm going to go through this. There's a number of things I have to state on the record for this and a few clarifications that I'm going to have to state on the record for this. So I don't mean anything ill about it, but there's a few things we have to make certain are clear on the record about this, and including the process. This is new business agenda item 7B, 6542206 BLH Properties 170 Lion Hill Road, 3-lot subdivision. So I'll go through a couple of housekeeping things and then I have a few things I need to state for clarification. This is an application for a 3-lot subdivision, which is considered a minor subdivision per the subdivision regs. And it also does not require a fee in lieu of conservation land as per Article 6, 1A, 6A, Roman numeral 3. We have received some documents. But before I do that, I just want to ask some questions that I know the answer to. Is this a complete application? No, it is not. And I'll mention a few things about that it is not complete. Have the fees been paid? Let me make a comment about the notification to people. There's two parts to this, and I'm just going to say it matter-of-factly because I think it's important to be noted on the record. Number one, it's not the commission's responsibility or the town of Woodstock's responsibility to send these notices out. Per our regulations, notices are required to go out to abutters and property owners within 500 feet of any portion of the property to be subdivided. It's to be sent by certified mail, return receipt no later than 7 days after application. Technically, the deadline for this application was June 6th. We received this on June 8th. To try to be nice and flexible, we did agree to add this to the agenda. 7 days to notify people would have been, or no later than, was yesterday. My understanding is yesterday was when notices went out. Although it meets technically the letter of the regulation, it doesn't meet the intent. And the reason I say that, and why I think it's one of the reasons we're going to have to table this, even though there are other reasons we have no choice but to table this, and I'll mention it, is to send notices out 1 day before a meeting, I don't think gives any opportunity for people who are in Woodstock likely to receive the notice, let alone one property owner in Newark, New York. I just want to ask this for the record. And again, I'm not stating any allegation. I just want to ask Mr. Ludis, do we know why, if this was submitted on the 8th, it took to the 15th, the day before today's meeting, to send notices out to abutters and property owners within 500 feet? I'm not saying you did it. I just want to know if there was a reason.
No, there was no particular reason. I was not responsible for sending out the notices, and
Okay.
I
didn't think you were, but
yeah.
I know you're here representing us. So I just want to make certain that that's noted for the record, because again, I know there are some folks here today, but you know, these notices, even though they go out, you know, I think to be fair, that should be one of the reasons we'll have to table, because we want to make certain people, you know, are notified. There's a few other reasons, because we don't have inlands, wetlands, and watercourses agency approval yet, and they're requiring some changes to the maps, the plans. We're going to need to see that, so we have no choice to table it for that reason. And we don't have NDDH approval before us, so we're going to have to table it for that reason anyway, plus anything additional. There's additional items such as we don't have erosion and sediment control bond, which we require. So, and we already noticed those. And then there's going to be a number of corrections. And I just want you to be aware of this, that we're going to require the regulation, the plans actually state, and this is going to need to be fixed in order for us to, and this is some of the other reasons I just want to note on the record from a process point of view up front. If you look at sheet number 2, item number, where is it? No, sheet number 2, oh, sheet number 3. And if you look at survey notes 5, it talks about that proposed houses, wells, septic systems, driveways, grading, and other improvements are conceptual in nature and intended to demonstrate the suitability of each lot for development compliance with the Brooklyn zoning regulations and the Brooklyn subdivision regulations. I'm sure Brooklyn regulations are very nice, but we don't really care about Brooklyn. It's Woodstock. So that's one item that needs to be fixed. Survey note 11 talks about the town of Brooklyn again. Survey note 13 talks about the town of Brooklyn again. That all needs to be corrected. And also it's been noted on sheet number 3, that site development plan title lists a 2-lot subdivision. This is actually 3-lot. And the same is under detail sheet, 2-lot subdivision on sheet number 4. And I believe there's also something you picked up, Delia, about something that referenced a 6-lot subdivision on sheet number 3. This is actually a 3-lot subdivision, so it all needs to be noted, and all that's going to have to be fixed. So technically, all that we have to see on the plans. Also, in addition, this doesn't show any of the properties across the road, and it doesn't show, was it Cherry Tree Corner Road, which I don't think there's actually any houses that people have that address. So it's an interesting little road that's there. Nothing bad about the road, but it does actually come into an intersection. Yep. So we technically actually need to see that road because that gets into discussions about stopping sight distance numbers, which is very important for us to have consideration. But we also need to see the properties across the road there because those are also people who are within 500 feet. So we need to actually see them all. So that is very important. That's going to have to be, plus inland wetlands is going to require some additional stuff. I guess they want some issues about a culvert. And they also, was it the upland wetlands? What is that? Yep. And that also is going to have to be on the plan, I believe, for inland wetlands, right, Ashley? So we're going to have to see that as well. So because those are just some of the things that we've noted, those are enough reasons that we are going to technically have, we don't have to table it right now, but we're going to have to make a vote tonight to, at some point, to table this to our July meeting, just so that we have that all clear on the record. I'm not saying anything about the merits of the application. I'm just talking about what's in the application that needs to be presented to us. Just some documents so that we make certain that we're all on the same page, no pun intended. We always incorporate zoning and subdivision regulations into our process, so they are so incorporated. We have the application. We have the development review checklist, although we are mindful that checklist is out of date and some things aren't applicable. We have the maps and plans dated April 27th of this year. We have a memo from you, Delia, June 14th, and we have a letter from you to Fire Marshal, Conservation Commission, Town Highway Foreman, June 14th. Also, I'll put into the record as well, and we can get copies of these out to people and we can show them tonight. It's not uncommon. I actually go to a property at the public street. I don't go onto the property. I don't, we can do that during the meeting. But it's not uncommon. I actually will go on the street and see a property unless I'm real familiar with it. But I don't go on the property. I did go this week on Lion Hill Road. I did take a look at the property from the street to take a look and see how things were. I took my own pictures because sometimes that's allowed. That at my age, it helps me remember, other than I have tons of Post-it notes. But as is common for me, I do share things with the commission in case the commission finds it's helpful. So there are pictures. Again, I didn't go on the road because I had no permission. That's separate from whether or not we want to do a site walk, but that's something we discuss if we want in that regard. So I just want to get all that stuff on the record up front so we knew about it all. And certainly any of the stuff, Mr. Woodis, that we have that we need to get to you will certainly get to you so you guys and the applicant can see. And we'll send those files to you.
Thank you. We actually did, in our final review, discover many of these notational things that you pointed out and made changes and did submit revised plans to Ashley this afternoon. But
we're not going to be able to, the commissioners have not seen any of that.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
So
that's
we're
fine.
not going to be able to fully go through that, especially if the public hasn't had a chance to see it up front.
That's fine. We'll go to next month. That's fine.
Well, we have to table anyway because some of the things like inland wetlands, we don't even have their approval yet. But I believe some of the things that have to be posted online have to be done no later than 24 hours before a meeting that's held completely virtual or by hybrid. So technically, even though we can show that plan, we're going to have to go over some of it anyway at the next meeting again, which I don't have a problem doing. So including any pictures that are shown because they weren't able to be posted in time. But I appreciate you picking that up. And so we can go accordingly. What I'm going to do is I'll open it up to staff to go through. And then certainly Mr. Woodis will afford you what time you feel you need to give your presentation, and we'll show stuff up on the screen. And then we'll go accordingly to any comments by commissioners, and we can take things from there as well as if there's anything from the public that has any questions. So Delia, you reviewed this, I know. You issued your memo. Is there anything you wanted to go through us other that we already haven't discussed on this, or whatever you wish to do?
Emphasize that erosion and sediment control bonds should be individual, one for each lot. It makes it a lot easier in the future for the lots to be, for the bonds to be released because they're often to different people.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Celia?
No.
After, did you have anything? I know Delia reviewed this. I don't want to leave you out. Okay, that's fine. So, and we'll go accordingly. Mr. Woodis, if there's stuff you wanted to present to us, understanding that the map we have is the initial one that was submitted in the 8th. If you wanted to go through your presentation, we're happy to hear from you. And as always, thank you for coming tonight. And I'd like for the record, I know you know this, but you're representing, you're the official representative, so to speak, of the applicant. So that way we have it noted in our record. But thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure. Do you want me to do a brief overview of the subdivision, or do we want to just wait until the next meeting?
However you want to handle it. If you want to go through whatever you want to present, I have no problem with it. And if there's anything we need to repeat that we feel needs to be repeated for any particular reasons, we'll certainly do that at the next meeting. So whatever you wish to present, we're happy to hear from you.
Okay, well, essentially it's, as you mentioned, it's a 3-lot subdivision. The property has an existing house, residence on it. So there are 2 new building lots. And as you expressed, it's been submitted to the health department, and we're waiting for their review, and we're in the process with the Wetlands Commission. So we'll be completing that process presumably before the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's a relatively simple property. The lots are significantly sized. The lot with the existing residence is 3.28 acres, and the other 2 lots are 2.5 acres and 5.5 acres, respectively. Other than that, there's nothing really remarkable about the subdivision, and we will take into account the comments by the chairman and by staff, and we'll make those changes for the next meeting, and we'll do a more complete review.
Thank you. We're going to show that what we have up on the screen. This is which one here? This is the revised one. No, this is the one we have in our packet. Yeah. Okay. So we have that up on the screen, but so I'll open up the commissioners, but if you don't mind, I actually have a few things that I wanted to ask if I could. I usually wait, but I'll just go if you don't mind. There's just a few questions I have, if you don't mind, Mr. Woodis.
Sure.
Just some of these I know the answers to, but I want them on the record just so that way we're thorough doing our review and whatever. And that way we make certain we cross the T's and dot the I's. One question I have is, well, we have the land surveyor sign and seal. Yes, we do. We have a professional engineer sign and seal. Our regulations talk about a certified soil scientist signature. I note that a soil scientist, the wetlands were flagged by Joseph Thoreau, if I pronounce it correctly, certified soil scientist in January of 2022. But our regulations do state about having a certified soil scientist signature. So I just want to make certain if we have that, just so that way we're covered in what we require. One question I have is, are there any public improvements? I know you're not building a new street, so I don't think there's any public improvements. Anything you're doing is on the private land, not anything public improvements on the street itself, separate from whatever inland wetlands wants for your culvert under by the road. But there's nothing else public improvements you're doing like what we sometimes see with a new road.
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then we have notified the Fire Marshal, Highway Foreman, and Conservation Commission. So we'll just see if they, what they have to say. Delia's already talked about the ENS control plans, which town staff does review. We also talk about whether or not we need an engineer to review it. Do you feel, Delia, this has to go for any reason to design professionals? If it doesn't have to, that's fine. Okay, I just wanted to state that on the record, so that way if...
Excuse me, I could not hear Delia's response.
Can you hear me now?
I can now.
Okay. So I'm recommending that we don't need to have design professionals review it for our purposes. The Wetlands Commission may want to because they're looking at a culvert.
Okay.
I just wanted to note that way, if we don't feel for some reason it has to go, it's just clear on the record. And I'm sure this will be done, but whenever plans are finalized to be submitted to us, if we approve this, on each page, you just have to have the P&Z signature box, just not on one page. But that gets done with the Mylars. My understanding is that each lot does meet the minimum of 1.25 acres that we require for a minor subdivision. And that the lot frontage for each lot, my understanding is at least 100 feet, which it looks to be the case. Am I correct, Mr. Wunas?
That is correct.
I just wanted to make certain that that was clear on the record. And there's no concerns you have, Delia, with our regulations that lot 3B would be an interior or rear type lot, whatever we call them. I think it meets our provisions of our regulations. Yep, that's why I asked. Okay, I just wanted to ask because we do have certain things. My understanding is yes. I just want to make certain we're clear that it is. So that way it doesn't, for some reason, get an issue. Sure, Joe. Correct.
We cannot hear Joseph.
We'll turn the thing.
I was just asking for clarification. My proposed lot 3B is not considered a rear lot, and Delia was starting to explain that.
My response, I hope you can hear me. My response is
Yes.
that with 165 feet of frontage, it should be considered a front lot. It doesn't really matter where the house is.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to bring it up just to make. I believe it doesn't fall in the under those provisions that we raise concerns about something that has a very skinny frontage. Correct. Yep. But sometimes there are some lots. Yeah. But there are some lots that are way in the back, but then there's very, very little frontage on the road.
We can't hear.
To deal with as best as we can. Well, one of the things about the property lines, them run along stone walls so you don't readily see them. But my understanding, Mr. Woodis, is that some of these property lines run along certain stone walls, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, including towards some of the side, the back. There's a number of them that are running along stone walls. So,
So maybe I can help with that. If you can see what's on the screen, if you can see that arrow, that's my cursor. And I'll show you lot 3B. This is the one in the middle. It goes all the way to the back or the bottom of the sheet of paper. And the first one, 3, is over here on the north side of the lot. In the middle is 3B. And on the south side of the lot, or the right side of the page, is the other lot. I don't think it all actually goes down. It goes to like to here.
Correct.
It's not very, it needs to be more clearly delineated on a map.
So the question then is about trying to better delineate the property lines on the map.
It may be hard to see at this scale. Maybe I can try to zoom in a little bit, but if you look at, see this number right here, these are meets and bounds. They are the property boundaries. So on the lines that you see that don't have those, they're not property boundaries. So they are labeled as clearly as they always are on all the plans that we see.
Just one of the things that initially you lose it is because there's a lot of stone walls that define property lines on this property as proposed. So you don't always see the black, bold line because otherwise it just runs right over, the stone walls.
So this line right here that my little hand is on, that's a boundary line.
Make it bigger so people can see. Yeah. But a lot of the stone walls.
This is the wetlands boundary. And this stone wall up here is not a property boundary. It's just a stone wall. The one that has the measurement, the 237.78 feet, that's a boundary line. So whenever you're looking at the map, that's how you can tell what's a boundary line and what's not.
Okay. It is just kind of tough to see just because there's so many stone walls. And if they had put, that dark black line, it would just be like right over the stone wall and you wouldn't see the stone wall. So that would be kind of tough. It's just a lot of stone walls around in the property. One of the questions I have, Mr. Woody, is do any part of the driveway have more than a 15% slope that you know
of? No, I'm not aware of that. I know that the driveway comes up a slope that's approximately 10%. There may be some 15% slopes way in the back, but they're not affecting any part of the development.
Okay, just because for driveways, we have certain provisions for, you can't be steep beyond a certain point. So I just wanted to make certain.
Yeah, the proposed driveway to the rear part of the development is less than 10%.
Okay, all right. And then another question I have is stopping sightline distances. Was there any measurements? And I know there are standards. I think some of the standards are you're 10 feet from the road and you have to be like 3.5 feet up. I know there's various standards that get followed for stopping sightline distances. We used to have those in our regulations as an appendix, but after 2012, for some reason that was removed. But I don't know if there were any calculations that you have or can be provided. Not for the existing driveway, that's already existing, but for lot 3B, 3C, for sight lines. When I stood on the road, again, I didn't go into the property. When you look, was it south up Lion Hill Road, which is kind of like a straightaway heading towards 197, there's no concern about stopping sightline distances there. I mean, you can see, yeah, in a minute, yeah. And when you're on lot 3C, you have a good enough distance looking north to where the road curves to intersect with Cherry Tree Corner Road, whatever, until the Lion Hill continues on. And eventually, I think it just connects with Old English Neighborhood Road. But when you're on lot 3B, there's a couple issues I'm not clear on. The driveway, I understand, is very limited where it could be put because of the lot frontage and that there's some wetlands that are there. So I can see why you had placed the driveway on the map in a certain location for that middle lot. But when you're trying to egress from that proposed driveway and you look to the right of the driveway up Lion Hill Road, there's no problem. You can see like almost forever. When you look to the left, there's a telephone pole right there. So I don't know how much that would or wouldn't obstruct a sight line for someone leaving that driveway. I don't know if you wanted to, these are just pictures I happen to take because sometimes I remember things better by a picture. But if you want, there were some other pictures. Let me show you which one I'm talking about. You have to go more. I'll show you. And we'll give you all these pictures. No, I sent more. Okay, well, show the last one, for example. That's the other one here. There's other pictures I took, but we'll get them all and we'll make certain everybody gets them in time. There's another one. So this, for example, is looking at lot 3B. There's the telephone pole. My understanding is somewhere in there will be a driveway that would go. I understand that given the way these lot lines are proposed, it's very limited where to put the driveway. But one of the things I'm asking, because we have to worry about safety, public safety, it's one of our statutory authority responsibilities, is if you come out of that driveway, you have a telephone pole to your left. what are the stopping sightline distances if you want to take a left onto Lion Hill Road, understanding that there is a posted speed limit by that curve if you keep going to the right and it curves around. Of course, we know people don't go the posted speed limit in Woodstock. I'll make no commentary on that because that seems to be for almost any road, or the Lion Hill Road being a straight road for most part. I think people think they can do that. My concern is, what are the actual stopping sightline distances for Lot 3B looking to the north? Did you guys calculate that?
We can, and we can provide that to you.
Okay. I think we also have to take into account that telephone pole that sits there, and how much would that potentially obstruct a sight line if you use the standards for stopping sightline distances. And I may be wrong. Maybe it isn't 10 feet from the road and you have to be 3.5 feet up. I think that's been one of the things we've used in the past, but you guys will know that better than me, given the proximity of the driveway to that telephone pole. The telephone pole isn't moving, but that just is a concern because we have to take into account public safety. And I don't know if anyone's been, regarding that road for as far as commissioners, but there is that definite curve. And if people come down Lion Hill Road and take that curve, although some people may do that on the Cherry whatever road, but especially if you're coming down Lion Hill, you can definitely take that turn quick and just keep on speeding along. So that's why I'm raising it for a public safety. One other thing that this picture raises is, Mr. Wood, whose responsibility is it? It's not the town's, that if the driveway comes out and that mailbox is there, whose responsibility is to pay for and move the mailbox?
Heck if I know.
So I'm assuming it would be the applicant, because the applicant then.
I assume that they'll work that out.
I'm assuming, but I think it's something we're going to need to keep in mind, because technically that mailbox would be moved if the driveway goes there. So I'm just raising it. So
we'll deal with it.
Yep. And then I have some questions about drainage. If the driveway is put where it's put, and I have some other pictures, but again, we'll make certain everybody gets these pictures, just like all other documents and other things that we need to get in. If water is coming down the driveway, I know on either side there's a ditch there and there's going to be a culvert in there. But if water drains down the driveway onto the road, we have to be mindful of what happens to surrounding properties. If you look at the, there's already an existing driveway, which is, it's there and it's there. If you look at lot 3C on the map, I don't know if we want to show Delia the sheet number 3 on it. And I'm just asking this just because these are some questions we go through and I don't know the answer. So that's why I ask these questions. So just bear with me. So I when we get the map up and I can show you what I'm talking about. Yep. If you blow it up for those two driveways there. And Mr. Woodis, you can see this map that we have up. I want to make certain you can see it on the screen.
I don't see it on your screen, but I have a copy of the map here.
Because we're trying to share it. Can commissioners see this on the screen who are on Zoom?
One moment.
Because we just want to make certain everybody can see this map that, when we're trying to do it this way. So we'll just get that fixed because I just want to make certain everybody's on the same as we're going through this. And then I promise this is my last question for right now. For some reason it doesn't want to share. Well, I did qualify by saying right now. But your point is taken, Commissioner Marcotte.
It has to be in the options.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you blow it up to show the two driveways, lot 3C, 3B? Again, these maps don't show properties on the other side of the road, which we're going to need to see. But if you go down to the street. So what I want to point out is, if you look at lot 3C driveway, property, but it's just any water that that would happen to flow onto the street, and if it were to make its way across the road, it's just going to end up into, I guess, a grassy field or grassy area. But if you look at this proposed driveway for 3B, one of my concerns with regards to that location is that's directly across from a driveway on the other side of the street. It doesn't show as, this doesn't show on this map because it doesn't show the property on the other side, but again, that will be rectified on a new plan. But there's a driveway right across from that, and that driveway across the road actually slopes down from the street, down towards the parking area and by the garage of the house back there. The reason I'm raising that is, has any calculation been done that this proposed driveway located there, right across from an existing driveway that then slopes down into someone's property and potentially right to their house and garage, what type of drainage would be coming potentially off that driveway? And would that create any problems then for a driveway put there that would then create problems for somebody else's property, which we try to not do if we can help that? I don't know if that was thought about relative to the placement of this driveway. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, so absolutely. And as you can see on the plan, there's a ditch that runs along the side of the road, and the water that flows down the driveway will be directed into the ditch and not into the road itself.
And how on these plans will it show that?
And maybe you can't see it in enough detail on this plan, and if you would like us to do a little bit more detail on the ends of the driveway, we can provide that on the next version of the plans.
I would like to. The reason is that it raises a concern to me about, we always have to be mindful of effects on surrounding property. Absolutely. I don't know if you've also taken into account whether or not a different option is to adjust the property line at the road between 3B and 3C, so the driveway of 3B actually doesn't come out directly to someone else's driveway if it were to create a problem with drainage. We actually have that authority in our regulations to require that if we feel we need to for property lines. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but technically we can. Our regulations allow that if we felt we had to. But I don't know what different provisions or options were taken into account for that. So I think that would be something that we would certainly want to learn more about. I couldn't really judge that from looking at these plans, and I have a big copy of it, and I really couldn't see. So I think that would be great for us to learn more about, and what options there may or may not be as far as placing the driveway there, or is there something that can be otherwise dealt with that property line to not pose a potential problem if a problem might occur. I'm just raising these as issues, that's all. And then I actually didn't tell the truth, Commissioner Marcotte. One last question about the driveway. How long is that driveway on lot 3B?
I don't know. Would you like me to scale it?
Or you don't have to tonight. The reason I'm asking is that if driveways are greater than 300 feet, not a common driveway, do we require pull-off areas? That's why I'm asking. Just because I just want to make certain. We have two things relative to the driveways. We have zoning regulations and we have subdivision regulations, and they both are valid, actually. The driveway regulations are in Chapter 7, I believe, of the subdivision. And somewhere they're here. Well, maybe they're in, where is it here? Yeah. That's more for common driveways. But what about, but for zoning regulations, we do have stuff about driveways. Driveway standards. And that's the only reason I ask is for long driveways. I know sometimes the fire marshal has mentioned some things about pull-off areas for the vehicles, but I don't know if that is for a common driveway, which this is not a common driveway, or is that for all driveways beyond a certain length. That's why I'm asking. I think that's something we just want to know if indeed it applies or it doesn't apply for a long driveway. I'm not saying anything's wrong with the driveway length. I'm just saying it's, I'm just raising it so that way we know what's needed. And because here it talks about, if you look under subdivision, under driveways, the section A and B, section C is common driveway. Section D talks about vehicle ingress and egress. And it says here that this applies for all driveways exceeding a length of 300. And it says that pull-off areas adjacent to all driveways shall be provided at average intervals of every 300 feet or is deemed necessary by the commission upon advice from the fire marshal and/or town engineer due to slope, slight line, or other characteristics. And then it talks about pull-off shall have a minimum load-bearing length of 40 feet and a minimum width of 10 feet. So that's why I'm just asking, you don't have to get into that calculation tonight. What is the length of that driveway? So, and the fire marshal may make a comment upon it, but that's why I was asking, just because it sometimes does come up for long driveways about where we stand. And I know that can be an issue sometimes for the fire vehicles if they have to get in and out. So, and why the fire marshal sometimes notes it. That's why I'm raising it. So I think that would be helpful if we could get, please, a total length of that driveway at some point. So we just note for the record for 3B. 3C doesn't look to be an issue relative to length for our regulations. So I'll open it up to other commissioners. I've spoken enough. Joe Palulik?
Standard drawing there for the gravel drive detail.
Are you talking about sheet number 4, Joe? Sheet 3. Okay.
For you, right?
Okay.
For the standard detail there for gravel drive. That misinterpreted. So I would recommend that you change that to 2 or flatter.
Do you mind just clarifying for us what you mean?
Max could mean you could go 1-to-1 slope. 45 degrees.
Jeff, we cannot hear him.
Yeah, the 2 max can be confusing.
So picture right there in
yeah,
the bottom right.
Where it's got 2 max up there is a horizontal distance.
Okay.
Some people could interpret that don't go flatter than 2-to-1, 2 horizontal to 1. Other people would say you've got to go steeper than 2-to-1. So what would clarify that is to change that to say 2 or flatter rather than 2 max. Follow me?
No. It says that the slope is 2-to-1 maximum. That's pretty clear to me.
So it says 2 max on the top line, and then right next to it, that's a 1.
Yeah, 2-to-1 max.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
I mean, that's a standard detail. How do you want it to read?
I want it to read 2 or flatter.
2 or flatter. So you want me to put a note that says 2 or flatter there?
Yeah, yes. And that horizontal distance, it should say 2 or flatter. The 1 in the vertical is fine. That way you can go 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, whatever. But you can't go steeper than 2 to 1. You follow?
I follow, but I don't know that that makes any more sense than what's already shown. I mean, maybe we just reword it to say maximum slope 2 to 1. Would that be helpful to you?
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Mr. Woodis, do you want to repeat that?
Who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to you because you were saying something and we just want to make certain we heard you.
Well, I'm not sure 2 or flatter makes any more sense. Maybe we modify it to say maximum slope 2 to 1. Does that help? Hello?
So the maximum steepness of the slope is 2 to 1.
That's correct.
Right. So you'd have to add the word steepness.
Well, no, when you say maximum slope 2 to 1, that refers to steepness. You don't have to say steepness.
All right. If you want to say maximum slope 2 to 1, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Anything from other commissioners?
I have another question.
Please, go ahead, sir.
I got another question. You said that part of this is in the FEMA 100-year flood zone.
I didn't say that.
Well, it's on your drawings.
Where does it say that?
Which sheet is that on? So I can check it.
It's on sheet survey note 10, and it's also on sheet 2, survey note. This subdivision does include land areas within the Federal Emergency Management Agency's 100-year flood hazard area. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. Is that true?
I would say yes. I'm not familiar with what part of the property is within that flood zone.
Let me ask you this question.
None of the building areas are within a flood zone.
Sorry, what was that, Bruce?
None of the proposed building areas are within a flood zone.
The property is. Yep. Does that have to be shown on the map, Delia, or not?
I have to double check.
Okay. Did you have anything else?
No.
Anything from anybody else? Did you have something, Joe Adaletta? So, Mr. Woodis, is there a way, I understand there's a lot of stone walls that define property lines here. Is there any way to better clarify the property line as they run through the stone walls without otherwise messing up showing the stone walls there?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I guess it's just clearer on the map for people looking at then.
We've already actually started to do that and was part of what we submitted today. But we will make sure it is much clearer the next time you see it.
Okay. And as far as documents that we provide, or I should say we get from other agencies or anything you provide, even though we're going to table this, the deadline to try to get things into us is 10 days before our meeting. because we have to get meeting packets out to commissioners, and we also have to make certain everything can get posted up on the town's website in accordance with state law. So we just try to follow that, including for us as well. So anything that got presented tonight that we don't have otherwise to show is very much going to be provided to you, but also made certain that everybody gets it. So did you have anything else, Joe? Let me just ask for David, Mark, Tim, Nancy. Do you have anything? David Morse? No? Okay. Mark, Nancy, do you have anything? Tim, do you have anything?
No, I'm all set.
Do we have anything from any other commissioners? I know this isn't a public hearing, but we do have members of the public, and we can, if we so wish, if they have any questions to clarify or comments. It has to be on this agenda item, however. If you do wish to be recognized, please state your name for the record. Because you're not an applicant or a commissioner or staff, we do have to limit time.
Yes, thank you. My name is Gary Garrebrand. Thank you. First of all, I don't want to take too much time because you folks have already gone over most of my concerns. But thank you for allowing me for just a moment or two. Good evening. Again, my name is Gary Garrebrand. My wife, Jean. We live in the home that the chairman has been talking about at 141 Lion Hill Road, which is directly across the street from the proposed 3-lot subdivision. We've lived at this address for 36 years, and we've lived in Woodstock for 40 years. Please understand, and I say please understand because this is important, we have no objections to development, and we also know that change is inevitable. However, the only thing that we ask as homeowners is that change or development not affect the quality of life of the people that currently live there. Also, let it be known that we have no problems with this 3-lot subdivision. We only want it to be safe. Number one, safety. Aesthetically pleasing to our street. And again, most importantly, does not affect the quality of life and the safety of all that travel on this busy road. Let me paraphrase for a moment. We've been there 36 years. When we moved there, there were only, I believe, 7 homes on that street. We now have 16. And that road has become a cut through for traffic coming from Hartford into Southbridge, because they come down 197, cut down Lion Hill Road to English Neighborhood Road and into Southbridge. It has become a very, very busy road. Our concerns are as follows, and we would ask and appreciate the commission and the developer to take these concerns under consideration. First, the site, and the commission, the chairman has already stated this, and I don't mean to go over it, but it's important. The site plan of the opposing driveway. It is very close to a significant bend or curve in the road. A car coming out of this driveway and making a left turn would not be able to see any oncoming traffic from around that curve, which travels at a quick speed. I live across the street, directly across the street, and I have difficulty coming out of my driveway and making a right turn because of the cars coming around. So I can only imagine the problem of cars coming out from across the street, making that left turn. Number 2 is the proposed driveway for these new homes is directly, as I said, directly across my driveway and my dining room window. This will cause 2 problems. First, as mentioned by the chairman, surface water drainage from rain and snow that will run down that driveway across the street and run down my drive which is at a much lower grade than that from across the street. This will cause significant amount of ice and problems for us getting in and out of primarily out of our driveway that we already experience from rain and snow during those bad months. Most streets have driveways that are offset. Very few, by just driving around, notice there are very few driveways I've noticed where they're directly across from one another. My suggestion and recommendation to the commission and the developer are this. Simply move the boundary line only at the street level, approximately 20 to 30 feet up Lion Hill Road, or I believe that would be south. This would allow, and this could easily be done without affecting any wetlands and solve all four concerns that we have. The block site view, the water drainage from rain and snow from the driveway, the headlights impairment coming into our home at night, and most importantly, safety. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration. Please let me know how my wife and I can work together with you, the developer, and the commission to address these concerns. Thank you very much. My pleasure. It's an important issue. Thank you.
Do you have anything else from any commissioners? I also want to make certain, Mr. Udis, we've given you enough opportunity to present whatever you wanted to present tonight to us. We're certainly going to make certain you continue to have opportunity at our next meeting, but I just want to make certain tonight you feel you've had a chance to present what you needed to present.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So with that said, then, 21st meeting. We will need to do that, yes. Would you like to make that motion? Okay. So this is tabling to the July 21st meeting. Is there a second?
Second it.
So motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Dean Gould to table this agenda item to our July 21st meeting. I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Sid Lodge is not here. Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. Aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. And Timothy Young.
Aye.
That's so tabled, and then we'll go accordingly. And if we get anything from NDDH and whatever further we get from inland wetlands, then certainly that will be provided to us as well. Okay, so that is so taken care of then. Thank you again, Mr. Udis, for taking the time with us tonight and being at our meeting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is 7C, cannabis regulations. I'm not expecting tonight we're going to come up with regulations. However, we are mindful of the fact, let me take out my cannabis file, that we did enact a moratorium on commercial growing and selling. That moratorium ends on Halloween, actually, I believe. And the reason we enacted a moratorium is to give us time to come up with regulations. We heard from town attorney during our annual legal training session that even though initially the law was looking to limit for a town of our population to only one potential commercial cultivator and one potential commercial dispenser seller, that may not actually hold if anything further changes, meaning could be even more than that. We're mindful over the border that there's a number of towns that seem to have growing number of these operations per Massachusetts law, but actually one's proposed in Thompson. right next, I think next to the dinosaur mini golf, which certainly is an interesting location. But that's for Thompson to sort through. But there is one that's proposed there, and it's been submitted. You know, the issue for us is looking at the big picture. How do we want to regulate it? The town has not decided. It's not our job, but the town has not decided to enact an ordinance to say we're opting out of the regulation of the state law. So really there is regulation we have to come up with. There are a number of towns that do have regulations and are looking at what to do. Some of the cities have them, but some of the cities' regulations are kind of, doesn't really pertain to us because they get into all sorts of building issues that we don't get into and certain things like that. When we had some initial discussion about this, when we were talking about a moratorium, I remember what Gail Dickinson said. And Gail Dickinson's idea at the time was we have to be mindful about where we might allow it. That is in neighborhoods, next to schools, things like that. One of the things she thought of, and I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, but she had said, well, if we can specify what zoning district it's in, which we can do, you know, one of her thoughts was, well, isn't it simple and easy just to say industrial district and say it can only be in the industrial district? I'm just raising that. And she had mentioned it as a way of thinking about, well, it's in a defined part of town. We know what's there, and it's not going to bump into much, you know, as far as where we stand. That's one thought. Whatever we do with regulations, we have to decide, number one, which district. We have the 3 districts: industrial, community, and lake. I don't think they're going to meet the lake district set asides of the properties there. But otherwise, we'd have to think about what district we want to put it in, or districts, and how do we want to regulate it? We can regulate this as we do other zoning matters, provided we don't bump into certain aspects of state law, but state law seems to give quite a bit of leeway to local zoning as far as how you handle it and how we would normally regulate things. We regulate signs, we regulate lighting, we regulate concerns about traffic, public safety, public welfare. There's all that type of stuff that gets, you know, into. And I encourage people to read through some of the stuff coming out of Thompson, because they're dealing with these issues in real time with an application. So I think we just have to start making some, I wouldn't say decisions, but we really need to start drilling down. Where would we like to regulate this in town? That is, are there places in town we would prefer not to see it? Do we think if we say community district, we have to be consistent throughout the community district? Correct me if I'm wrong, Dealer, but we can't say it can be in this part of the community district and not in the other. You have to be consistent. And the community district is like what, 99% of the town, 95% of the town. Again, none of this would go in the Lake District because, number one, the property owners are held to stricter standards by private deeds and stuff, but their lots are so small they couldn't even fit it unless you want to have micro cannabis and sell it out of a little micro store. So really, we're talking about what do we do with community district and industrial district. So the issue really, and I'll open up for discussion, what do we feel as far as, do we want to potentially allow this? I'm not saying, you know, that it's good or bad to have it, but state law does allow it, separate from the fact federal law views this as illegal. But state law allows it. Do we want to, where in town do we feel we don't want to see it? Meaning, do we want to say community district and you have to be X number of feet away from a residence or from a school or from a religious facility or a town facility, or do we want to limit it into just one district, such as industrial district? I'll open it up for discussion because that's going to have bearing on what type of regulations we set, especially if we say it can be in the community district. We're going to have to come up with do's and don'ts for anywhere in the community district in town to be consistent. Whatever we do in community district has to be consistent throughout that entire district, which again is 95 or something % of the town in that district, really where the residences are outside the lake. Yes. It would, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Dia, there's no existing business like it. in town. So a business to come in, even if they take a existing business that's sold, that correct.
We can't hear.
I'm sorry, if you identify like a cannabis retailer, I'm not sure what the phrases you would use, but if you identify that as its own separate use, you could specify that it needs a special permit. If you just consider it to be retail commercial, then you have lots of retail commercial properties, some of which are grandfathered, and so they have turnover of businesses with only a non-residential zoning permit.
We may want to consider special permit just because of some of the issues that could potentially be unique and concerns to cannabis. I know some towns, a number of towns that are looking into it or have looked at regulations have listed it as special permit. But again, we'd have to decide that based upon how we want to handle it in whatever district. Joe Adaletta?
Yes. First, I thought we're looking for Rich Roberts to come up with some proposed regulations to at least be a starting point for us to look at discussion. Is that true?
It's in part, but some of that's going to be dependent upon where in town we might want to do it. If and having spoken prior with Rich about it, if we say we're okay with it in the community district, well, then that certainly gets looked into about what towns are doing for that. If we say, you know, we want it in the industrial district, for example, then a lot of regulations that he might give us examples on, some of that doesn't apply. So, but yes, we would want to see about, we've asked to get some stuff from Rich. Yep.
And then secondly, industrial district sounds like a good idea for the retail portion of what or the dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a grower though who wants to apply, I would say in the industrial district would still be the location to grow cannabis.
We'd have to determine that, how we want to handle it.
Okay.
Because there's two different parts. One is the commercial
dispensary.
And then there's, you know, because you can be a cultivator.
Right.
But then there's also a dispensary retailer. Sometimes they're the same.
Often the cultivation is done all indoors in a controlled environment. It's not like it's going to be done out in the field somewhere. Cultivation is all controlled indoors with lights and very controlled environment, from what I understand.
And my understanding is, to follow up on what David said, that the certainly is going to be rules that the state has as far as, you know, safety of the product and whatever standards they want to set, you know, for that. Because I'm sure they're going to want to make certain that, you know, when they go through this licensing process, which is intense and expensive with the state, I'm sure there's a lot of standards that get into all sorts of things about what you have to adhere to for state regulations, about how you grow it and how you, whatever safety stuff, but that's stuff beyond us. But David's point, you're saying then, David, that likely this is all going to be grown inside under controlled conditions, as opposed to just out in the field somewhere.
Yeah, that's from what I've seen of the operations in Massachusetts. They're all indoor, very controlled environment. It's too valuable of a crop to grow outside where people can get at it. You can't keep it safe.
Is that your cat trying to say something to us, David,
yes.
Or the cat's agreeing with you?
Yes, the cats are having a fight while I'm trying to talk.
So I make a motion from now on that we just listen to David's cats and not David. And that if he comes to a meeting, he can only bring one cat, not two or more. Joe Adaletta?
We can't hear him.
Unfortunately, our AV setup isn't great in this.
In short, do we have to look at our industrial park regulations to see if we have to modify them to allow growing something as well as dispensing a retail type of operation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's quick.
Just like in the community district, it's it. Yep. Yes, we would. Yep.
Are indoors. It still smells like a herd of skunks. I don't know why. That's my opinion. Some people may like the smell.
When it's growing or when it's burning?
When it's growing. No, when it's growing.
Especially the ventilation those indoor places have.
Big giant greenhouses, the couple that I know of are essentially that's what they are, greenhouses, and they open the windows or open part of the doors at certain, like it's too hot in there, they ventilate. But it smells like a herd of skunks.
With reason to work it into the industrial park, industrial district, industrial park.
We have to be mindful of, they have to be mindful of what the potential of the intensity of traffic.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of any type of public safety we worry about with anything. Yes, we have to be, and that's why some towns say you can't be.
And at some point, would we want a public hearing? We're going in that direction.
Yes, so all these meetings are public. Yes, and then what's going to happen is that we're going to have to change regulation, which has to be a formal public hearing. Okay. So I sent some notifications out via Facebook, posted some things saying, hey, we're taking this topic back up. But and all these meetings are certainly open to the public. But once we craft regulations and have to take it out, absolutely, Joe, that, public hearing. Now, as we had talked with Rich Roberts about at the annual legal training session, if we felt we needed to extend a moratorium, we could, if we felt we needed more time. But just be mindful our moratorium ends on October 31st. So we got to be mindful on the calendar that if we feel we're ready and can get regulations out and effective before that deadline, great. If we can't, and we don't want to rush something and create a bad regulation, or we feel that we could have regulations, but they're not going to be effective before that deadline, we just have to be aware of the deadline. And we can move that. We can enact we can extend the moratorium. That was asked at the annual legal training session. I'm not suggesting we put another year onto it, but we just want to be mindful that we don't create any gap where a moratorium ends and we think we have regulations in place, but they haven't yet been enacted. We don't want to have something fall through the cracks, but we are going to very much want to continue to get public input, in many ways, on this. A lot of towns are dealing with it. I don't know how many towns have enacted outright bans. I honestly don't know. So, so I guess an issue for us to wrestle with as we're thinking about this is where do we want it and where would the public view it? In that regard. Dean, I'm going to move this here just so we can let on.
I would say we'd be better off keeping it open in the community district and just regulating it with setbacks. Because if I'm correct, all of our industrial park districts are off of like town roads.
We have one industrial district where Jeffco is, where Crabtree used to be.
So it's
that's
off
the
of
industrial.
It's not on a main thoroughfare. So if you put a dispensary there, that's gonna drive a lot of traffic down that road. So that's what Peakbrook.
It's Peakbrook Road, yeah. Which
that's
is
gonna drive a lot of traffic.
Which is a nice cutover to work your way off to 44 eventually. But yes, we have to be mindful of what we would do because we're going to have to be mindful of traffic. I mean, if we create regulations for the community district and say it's allowed on, that Cherry Tree Corner Road, and someone wants to put it there, we got to be mindful of traffic on a little road like that versus, how do we do that? Because, some places, if they're successful, and, I don't have a problem with the business being successful, could generate traffic. But that can be the case for other businesses as well.
So could regulation be could regulations be crafted that describe something like that? That it's got a dispensary would be in a plaza or a space with parking and lighting that would be a security and safety issue?
Delia, did you want to answer that?
Yes, yes, I want to answer it. No, I don't think you could do that. If you say that it's allowed in District A, it's allowed in all of District A. And then they would have to choose a property and show how they met the standards. But like, for instance, we've seen on other properties where you allow with a special permit a business in the community district. You haven't broken that down into community district subpart A and B or whatever. That's how you end up sometimes with a business on a dead end dirt road, because you would have to break the town down into more zones, and then you could say what's allowed in this zone is different than that zone. But all of community districts, all the same district.
I don't see why.
I think you might be able to set standards, yes, but you can't say what part of the town. That's different standard than, but I'm saying it's different. So you could have standards like maybe landscaping and maybe require greater filtration or something. I'm not sure about that, but I'm thinking that you might be able to do that.
Additional regulations. I've seen some of the medical marijuana. We require additional provisions with regards to what is happening for additional traffic, additional lighting, pertaining to that class of business.
We can't hear.
Sorry.
Pertaining to that type of business, but not saying where in town it would go, other than you can't place it within like 500 feet of a school or, things like that, or of a mini golf or something. But do say this type of business, there are some additional things. And that's why some towns do special permits. Or for I know some have done it for medical marijuana, and my understanding is some are looking at it, and then they already have it for the retail use that isn't considered medical, to be able to have the ability to put further conditions if needed, depending upon where it may go. So, but I believe we can put those additional things on in the regulations. But Delia's point is also correct, which I know was separate from what you said, which is we can't say you can only be in the northern part of the community district. We can say you can be anywhere in the community district, but you can't be within X number of feet of a school, or X number of feet of a daycare, of X number of feet of a whatever, or even raise concerns about, traffic and, can streets handle it or not handle it where you want to put it. Those things we can. We just can't carve out, But your point is well taken that we can look into that. And again, a special permit process gives you, I wouldn't say you, but gives a commission opportunity to vet all that out in more detail if needed. We also have size limits on non-ag, non-residential, that you can't go beyond a certain size. Square footage, we have those built into the regs. So if someone wants to build a 1 million square foot cannabis growing / retail center, they can't, because that's above our maximum square footage. If it's retail, it's a business. That I think still gets into our non-residential, non-agriculture, because it's growing it commercially, which the state views differently. I don't think the state views that as ag, though. It doesn't. It doesn't. The state law doesn't view that as agriculture, is my understanding. That's why they came up with that 300-something page bill for recreational. And they're licensing it differently, not licensing it as ag. They're licensing it through commercial processes via the state. Then the state taxes it. And then I think municipalities might be able to tax per the state law. But that's outside of our view. But I don't believe this falls under ag. This falls under commercial for the way that's being done, the way the state has defined it. We can verify that with Rich, but I believe that's what that law did. So
Middle school and the the South Campus of the Woodstock Academy.
There's an additional. No.
Yeah.
The industrial district doesn't go beyond that.
Just saying, by the way the crow flies, it's not all that far.
That's an east-west.
I don't know how far that is. There's also that road that goes.
It's clearly industrial.
Isn't there farmland that goes?
Industrial.
Yeah, in between there is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean,
It's going to be still more than 5 feet.
if you get down Crabtree, I mean, down Peakbrook to 171 and then down Butts Road, it's
Probably enough, more than enough distance. There's farmland that runs between that. Along Butts Road.
so it's a mile and a half total Peakbrook to 171 and down Butts Road to get to the middle school. So
That can all be looked at on. I guess the issue for us is trying to sort through some of this as far as where we want to put it. So we can certainly get some additional to see what he might have. We did ask him. Does anybody else, any other commissioners have any thoughts about where we may or may not want it? I mean, quite frankly, it's either you allow it in the community district, which is the large part of town, or if we have concerns about that, you look at to be more defined, such as an industrial district. Those are really the two districts that we would be talking about. And if we're going to do community district, we just have to be mindful of, what type of provisions we want, built into it, the regs. We did ask Rich to at the annual legal training session to provide us some stuff. So I'll follow up with him to see what stuff he might have that he think, might be helpful for us.
Yeah, just as a quick reference for what Jeff was talking about, I just went on Google Earth, and from the middle school to Jeffco Fabrics, it's 3,000 feet.
But you're okay. I didn't want to interrupt Joe Adaletta, but go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can hear him.
That's fine.
Referring to what Jeff was talking about, as far as distance from the middle school to the industrial site, it's like 3,000 feet. Just on a quick Google Earth measurement.
That's a good distance. Joe, were you saying something further?
Discussion.
Oh, absolutely.
About this, because listening about some of the concerns of growing it, having it in the industrial district may not be the best solution. Being not able to draft standards for the community district sounds like a possible way to go.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful for us. And this is just one of a series of discussions we're going to have to be having.
Okay.
I think it's good for us to be thinking of some of this, because when we get some things from Rich, we want to be mindful, those regulations in those towns, where are they applying to? Are they applying to one or just a couple of very well-defined districts, or is it more town-wide? Because some towns have a lot of districts. So we just want to be mindful of how we're thinking. I think it's good to be taking this back up, and we're certainly going to be continuing to do that and go, accordingly. I know we have a member of the public who's here. You're not required to say anything. I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add to us. You're not required to. These are all. Continue to discuss it. If you could say your name. Yeah.
Stand at the podium.
No,
I'll stay on that. No, I just kind of want to ask you guys questions and stuff about it. Hi, I'm Dan Garcia. Nice to meet you. I agree with the people that are talking about leaving a special permit in the commercial area. So, I've been looking into this since it opened up. My wife and I actually started an LLC. We're registered through the town, we're registered through the state. And I don't know what the guys at Thompson are doing. I know them pretty well, but I don't think they understand the process because it's all by lottery. So for them to be jumping the gun and saying we're going to put a dispensary here, nobody's got that yet. Like they can't. So I hope they get it. But, you know, when you guys are talking about doing this regulation stuff, you should really keep in mind there's a really nice element about the quiet corner. For instance, one of the properties that really interests us up the road a piece here, 1011 Route 169, the old Orange Art building. Everybody familiar with that? That's like, it's almost coincidental how perfect that is for it. We went and looked at it. That's got an addition on it. That's, I think, the better part of 2,000 square feet. It's built with 6-panel construction. It's all perfectly temperature regulated. That would be perfect for what I believe it was David was talking about for indoor growing. It's on the better part of 5 acres. You can still outdoor grow stuff. You know, there's a number of licenses out there. I'm not aware of any that actually allow you to grow and sell on the same location. If you're a cultivator, you cannot sell to anybody except a dispenser. If you're a micro cultivator, on the other hand, you can sell via delivery, either using your own employees or somebody who has a delivery license. So the two are actually quite separate. You would be well appointed to actually make different rules for both of them. But you know, you've got this great quiet corner agricultural thing going on here. And the way I interpret kind of the spirit of a micro cultivator is like a micro brewery. You know, you don't have to have like a big indoor robotic setup. Like, yeah, you would want that as a business to kind of keep your primary revenue going. But I mean, do stuff that reminds people of rural New England. I mean, it'd be a really cool thing to have like small batch cannabis and stuff like that. You know, you have things that you do grow outside in greenhouses or something along those lines. And those would be considerations to talk about, you know. You don't want it necessarily in an industrial park to do things like that. There's going to be security concerns, but it would just be a really nice thing to bring a lot of, you know, attention and the flavor of this community, the whole quiet corner, to that kind of business. So I'd strongly recommend not confining it to a warehouse, because this is a really nice place for it. We've got some really cool properties around here that would be just perfect for the licenses that are available.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I want to qualify one thing, that I'm only speaking as a commissioner. I'm not speaking as a doctor, because federal law prohibits me from dealing with cannabis professionally. So I'm just going to make that clear. So I'm not being tagged that it's Dr. Gordon speaking to any of these issues. So is there anything further on this? I mean, certainly this is a series of discussions we're going to be having before we even write the words. And we'll see what other towns are doing, from getting it from Rich Roberts to see from his legal perspective, and what further we get from, you know, our own thinking and stuff. These are all different ideas and concepts that have been thrown up. So it's good for us to kind of throw these things around and think about them and see what we might gel together. And certainly hopeful to be getting more input from the community as we move forward. So thank you for being here tonight, because it's always helpful for us to get input from people. Because you see, some nights we don't get lots of people on these discussions. So, well, I know him well, so yes, but I know him well, yes. So, and I like his bakery products. So, do we have anything else on this? Anything else from you guys on? Okay. So I'll follow up with Rich about getting some stuff. We have no public hearings, no old business, no prelim discussion tonight. We have ZEO reports. I don't know if there's anything, Ashley, from your perspective. Okay. I mean, people are well behaved in town.
I'd like to, if I may.
Sure, Joe. Did you have something?
Yes. On the
Actually, I'm just going to, before you, let me just turn this around. Sorry. This is another example of why we really need to convince the town to improve the AV setup in this room. So.
Joe? Yes, on the ZEO report, looking at the second to the last item, the Echo Farm, I believe the HO stands for a home occupation permit. And when I saw that, I did speak with Ashley, or emailed Ashley to ask if she could bring the application for that to the meeting, which she has. That's at least our papers. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about my concern on using a home occupation concept for the retail sales in a much larger operation that this particular applicant is doing at Echo Farms. They're looking to have sales of their own produce, own vegetables and flowers that they grow on the farm. They're looking to sell in the new barn that they're putting up. And 2 weeks ago or a month ago when we had the preliminary hearing and the applicants were here, there were comments. I know I had my comments, and I think another commissioner or two had their own comments about hearing what the applicant was talking about during the preliminary hearing and feeling that given how they were looking to bring in arts and crafts and outside produced materials to sell, it seemed like that would require more of a special permit as opposed to a home occupation carved out of a small space within the very large barn that's being constructed on the site. And also at our table, I think, to identify what the rationale was for assigning a home occupation permit was a much earlier permit to the Black Walnut Farm some time ago as a home occupation permit. And I'm assuming, Ashley, that's probably why you have that on our table as well.
That one was approved by Tina at the time.
That's what I see. She signed off on that. And earlier tonight, it was pointed out that our discussion and definition zoning talks about commercial use. And the definition for that looks like it applies to what, in retrospect, Black Walnut Farm is doing, but currently what Echo Farm is looking to do. And those type of commercial use commercial retail use fall under the special permit application process. I'd also like to make sure that the applicants at Echo Farm look into the fact that if they're already applying for a tax abatement as an agricultural enterprise, the town of Woodstock tax abatement process would allow them to get a 50% tax abatement on an agricultural operation. There's the potential that a retail component of this may jeopardize that tax abatement allowance. But mostly I'm concerned about how we're using the home occupation permitting process for what I really think fall under other definitions in our regulations. And again, on page 13 of our zoning booklet, it talks about the use. And then on page 39, there's a specific retail commercial uses that's permitted in the community district under a special permit. So I'm worried that this use of the home occupation within a much larger either agricultural or commercial enterprise may cause problems later on. Not the least of which is trying to monitor the parking, which I see on the Echo Farm application, they crossed out question number 5, which was will more than 4 parking spaces be dedicated to the use of the activity? And it was typed in by the applicant as yes, then crossed out later and written as no. And the home occupation permit certainly is pretty clear that there's no more than 4 parking spaces. In a site like this that has both a agricultural component and a farm store sales type of component, which they're getting to, they're not there yet because the farm's not built. Trying to monitor this regulation for only 4 parking spaces and 4 cars at the site used in the home occupation section of the barn sounds like a monitoring and enforcement challenge as well. So I had asked Ashley, as I said, by email, and she kindly presented these 2, and I just wanted to again follow up with the discussion and thought process that went into considering this as a home occupation. When during the preliminary hearing, there was some concern that it was really more suitable to a special permit process. And I don't know.
Actually,
you wants to comment on it directly.
I know you issued the permit, so I'll certainly, as CEO, let you speak to it if you wish.
Yeah, I mean, I compared it to Black Walnut Farm, because I knew that was one that was more recent. And then going back on the minutes of that day, it just kind of sounded like it would fall under home occupation as long as it didn't exceed like the percentage of the dwelling, which I believe is 50%, and they vote 30. That was my opinion.
Okay, well,
I think one of the issues, Joe, is for us as a commission, we know that we really need to look again at regulations for home occupations. And part of that is being bundled into looking at yes. So we know, and we've identified this, that not this, but I mean, home occupations in general, that we do need to take back up home occupations, how we're handling that. What do we need to do to clarify our regulations, update the regulations? That is on our active list. And so some of the things you raise in general are very important to remind us of. And part of that work is, in a sense, being bundled into when we're looking at ag, because some of the types of processes or different types of permitting structure looking at ag does in some ways pertain to different types of structures we might want to better clarify and define for non-ag commercial. You know, there's a home occupation, then you start rising up to, you know, when you start getting beyond a home occupation, which our regulations say you got to jump right to a special permit. But how do we handle some of this? In fact, some towns, I think Pomfret has a couple of levels of home occupations that they define. So I think some of these issues we need to better define. And also when we're seeing some of these things coming up through ag, not saying it's right or wrong, we do have to think about how is that being handled in general. So any rules we're doing for home occupation, we want to think of non-ag and ag as far as how do we allow these things. So it sounds like all the more reason for us to try to, I don't know, clarify our regs if we feel we need to, or see what's working and not working, and what do we need to do with home occupations. I don't know if that would give better definition and better structure to things.
Well, discussion with our CEO help clarify the intent of our regulations with the CEO, so that by the time we get to adjusting or changing any of the regulations, it's going to be quite a while, I would think.
And if there are future, in the near future, more home occupation applications coming to Ashley, I think we could help Ashley understand what the commission was driving at and what it's pretty clear in the regulations of how to apply those regulations, so that we don't run into trouble with neighbors complaining about excess traffic or other issues raised for what should be a home occupation with little to no impact, traffic impact on a neighborhood. And I would encourage you as chair to put that on an agenda item at some near meeting, so that we as commissioners can talk, at least amongst ourselves, in the presence of our CEO, so she has a better idea of what the commission is seeing as a home occupation concept. Because I think these two applications are really not home occupations. They're retail sales, and they're not even being made by anybody in the home. They're just using outside sourced items and selling them. And to me, that doesn't sound like a home occupation.
Well, 2 points. One is, I know actually one of the reasons you had given us, we had gotten a copy of the Black Walnut Farm, that was an example you were looking at a prior CEO had issued, to see what had been done before, to try to, you know, see where we are. So I think the ball's in our court as a commission to see, well, what more do we want to, how are we viewing home occupations? To speak to your other point about putting this on the agenda, it actually is going to be. We have wanted, when we were looking to take back up ag, which is going to happen very soon since we've completed affordable housing, part of that, looking through some of that permitting structure for ag. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming. Is how are we looking at different levels of permits based upon scope of things for agriculture, including non-ag things that happen on ag property, which is very different from ag things that happen on ag property. But also at the same time, when we're starting to think about, well, farm stores, at what point might they cross a line and really turn into non-ag retail? That gets back to a point several or so years ago Dexter Young raised about, well, where are we going to set that line? And we should set the line somewhere. That does dovetail with, well, what do we do with non-ag businesses, as far as what type of, you know, permitting structure or different types of permitting structure might we have that kind of parallels that. And that also includes home occupation. So we before we had to get into affordable housing, we were heading down a path to kind of look at all of that and see what were common things and what were non-common things that we needed to think about, and think about a, you know, reasonable and responsible permitting structures and processes. So that actually is due to come back up very soon to us, to take that stuff back up. And actually, that's part of what our planning meeting is going to start to delve back into, is taking these things back up before, you know, in a sense, kind of taking where we left off, and try to, you know, restart that thinking and process.
Mm-hmm. We can't hear what's happening.
That, again, as she reviews these home occupation permits, she'll have a better understanding of what the commission's intent was when they were developed.
And one thing that might be helpful, because I know, and this is one of the problems with us trying to deal with Zoom, because we do have limitations with our audio visual, unfortunately. So as opposed to in person. So unfortunately, just the setups we have in this room or any room here. there's two ways of approaching that. One is to take back up what we were doing, and home occupation is kind of, and non-ag business stuff is kind of being in some ways thought about concurrent with ag. There are sometimes there's overlaps, and certainly there's other times there isn't. Another thing, if we wanted to focus just on home occupation, have a discussion, you know, where we won't get into that in much detail tonight, and hear more from, you know, for example, you know, how what Ashley's view is on our current home occupation regulations. I'm sure there's good and bad aspects of our regulations. I know some prior CEOs have mentioned to us good and bad things about our home occupations. Perhaps if we wanted, since there's going to be a lot that we're going to have to sort through when we put all this in to one meeting, does the commission think that we might want to have an additional meeting to delve into home occupation? I don't want to take away from bringing back up ag, because that is important. And as we can see, some of this does dovetail. But do we want to then focus our next planning meeting just on home occupation relative to ag uses, home occupation relative to non-ag uses? That would mean the next planning meeting after that falls in August. I don't want to delay much taking back up ag. So one thing I'm trying to think of is, do we want to hold an additional meeting beyond our one planning meeting in July to be able to, in more of a timely manner, sort through some of these issues with home occupation while we're also dealing with taking back up ag? I mean, I know people don't want to have extra meetings, but I'm just trying to think of how do we handle this in real time, because Ashley is dealing with it as CEO. And if there's limitations and things that aren't clear as they should be in our regulations, that's our purview to clarify and see what to do, you know, with it, because we have to go with the regulations as they're currently written. Would that be something to do?
That would be.
Well, right now, what we have as a placeholder, I haven't issued the agenda yet, was to take back up ag where we left off. Some of that gets into home occupation, some gets into how we regulate certain businesses, thinking about how do we regulate non-ag things that happen on ag land. We can, if we want, focus just on home occupation at our next planning meeting in, what's that, 2 weeks? 3. But again, I don't want to delay also ag. So the issue is, if we were to say, yes, we feel we need to take back up home occupation and really spend some time focusing on that, when with our meetings do we want to also take back up ag? We won't be able to do that at a regular business meeting. And in fact, we have a public hearing at our next business meeting that we've already scheduled. So we can, at the July, what is that, 7th, do home occupation and spend some good time delving into it and getting some input as far as what works, doesn't work. I don't even have a problem getting some input from some of our former CEOs who have had to deal with some of the pros and cons of our regulations. How do we want to handle taking back up ag? Joe, oh, no, no.
Subject, because this is definitely part farm store, part retail, part home occupation. Home occupation in the definitions is very broad, and it just says a home-based business. That doesn't necessarily say you have to make your stuff at home. Maybe that was the intent, and that's fine. And if that's what we're going to do moving forward, that's fine. But I do think we have to figure out a schedule of only farm store stuff versus home occupation versus special permit versus if we're going to come up with some other permitting system, because it stuff definitely crosses lines and you have to figure out, you know, and it's part of a matter of opinion, you know, so.
And intention.
And intention, yes. So, and you know, it's, you know, we all have different interpretations. So if we can get a little bit clearer on exactly what you want for home occupation versus, you know, a farm store versus just a farm in general, make things a little bit clearer for everyone and how we want to permit it.
And that gets into something like, how do we view retail? Has nothing to do with ag. How do we view retail relative to ag?
Retail on a farm.
Right. How do we view some of these different things? So yes, there is overlap, but I guess process wise, do we want, they do, there's a lot of overlap in certain of this. Do we want to take it back up and kind of the bigger thing that we were going to all take back up, ag and home occupation and business, or just focus on home occupation to kind of drill some things if there's a concern about needing to do it timely? Joe?
Yeah, if I could suggest, looking at even this report, there were 4 home occupation permits issued. What I think might be useful at the July 7th meeting is just having a commission discussion about the existing regulations, what the intention was behind having a home occupation process, and just look at what the current regulation means without trying to think about changing it at our next meeting, but just help the commissioners speak up about what they see the regulations mean for Woodstock.
So focus on home occupation.
On home occupation. It's just that one meeting, I think.
Yeah, we can do that. And one thing we can do as well is we have a couple of former ZEOs who have had to deal with this as well. So I think getting Ashley's input as our ZEO, having to use these regulations, I'm not going to put you on the spot right now, but what does she sees work? What does she see doesn't work? What is too vague or just unclear that we really need? What is she aware of that other places? But we also have, the benefit that, I know you're our planner, but you have history of dealing with our regs and have commented about home occupations in the past with our regs when you were ZEO. But we also have Tina as well, who also had to deal with it. And Tina also has raised issues and suggestions. So I think we have some historical input we can provide, as well as real-time input, right now that we're, dealing with. And also, how are we defining home occupations? Again, some towns have different degrees of home occupations, depending upon what actually is being done and that type of stuff. I think Pomfret still might have 2 classifications. I know some places have more. So I don't want to make the regulations too complicated, but it sounds like that we just need to look to see what's happening now and what's happened in the past, and really get a better understanding of how we want to move forward, not to limit home occupations, but how do we guide that? And how do you do it properly and reasonably? So why don't we?
Yeah, I would think if the one thing, if it's home occupation and the business is in the home, but when the business is in a building outside the home, that's different. I know we do, but I'm just saying.
Also, what happens if you're doing a home occupation, but you also have another business? I think might get to your point is, they may say they're not going to have more than 4 parking spaces for their home occupation. We're not having actually running around 24 hours a day police. But how do you manage that? There's parking for the farm and parking for, for this, and then there's personal parking. How do you handle that? It becomes, I'm not advocating that we start policing it left and right. How do you deal with something?
If the regulations help us with that. Retail uses. Anyway, that's why I think meeting where both commissioners
what I'll do is I'll be talking with Ashley. We do have again the benefit of we have to start prior to that. Also, Tina, who also raised concerns to us when she was home occupation. And we can kind of see where we are with getting that kind of town was done with this home occupation, where we with you those regulations haven't been updated in a very long time. Sounds like it's time for us to see what to do.
Let's talk about home.
Has
brought me to do something I've never done before.
We do.
I say just do it anyway.
We're just going to take care of a couple of things real quick, and something came up with the board of selectmen. That's why I wanted to raise it. We have nothing to review for budget review and bills. We have two communications. We don't need to go through the communication. We did get, as chair, I got a copy of a letter from the Woodstock Cemetery Association on Center Cemetery Road that I guess the issues they have and concerns about wanting, that's a scenic road, about why they wanted to pave or do some improvements to have better safety and drainage. This actually came up at the Board of Selectmen meeting. It was on the agenda. The selectmen did have this letter that I had sent back to the Center Cemetery Road, just saying what the process is for ordinance. According to what I've been told by the first selectman, no decision has been made by the selectmen what to do. They received some input from John Navarro about what options they might want to do. It's not clear they want to pave that section in front of the cemetery. However, if they do any improvements to improve the safety of the road and improve other things with drainage, improvements do fall under the ordinance that we have jurisdiction. Back in 2011, I think it was, we did have a series of monster public hearings about coming up with that working document in association with Board of Selectmen and Highway Department about what's maintenance, what's improvement, and certainly things that need to be due for emergency, ask us in the middle of the night about it. They just have to be done. So it sounds like the selectmen are sorting through this with the Highway Department. Once they decide that they want to do something that's improvement, they do know that they then have to either the town or the Cemetery Road has to submit a activity on scenic roads. I think that's what the permit is, correct? And then we hold a public hearing for the ordinance and decide. That's the jurisdiction. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was on the agenda tonight. At their meeting. So just stay tuned.
Good use for ARPA money to fix that.
If they so decide, yes. If they so decide, that's going to be up to them. But yes, well, stay tuned. We'll see when that comes back. It sounds like come to us because it's going to be on the scenic road. If so choose. That takes us to agenda item 15, which I believe Commissioner Marcotte is, eagerly waiting to say something.
I should have made the ice earlier. Well, it is the first time for me, but I need to adjourn.
You know what? Being the first time you say the motion to adjourn,
thank you. I've been practicing in the mirror.
And you know what? Just because the two Joes have two motions that they did, I think it's time that we have a Jeff and Jeff motion. I'm going to second that motion.
I have to stay on my channel.
So,
my scrapbook.
So motion by Jeff Marcotte, seconded by Jeff Gordon to adjourn the meeting. I'm going to go through the roll because we're required. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. I got to think about that, but I'm going to say aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula. And Timothy Young.
Aye.
We're so adjourned at 10:26. Thank you, everybody.